This video is a preview from the Opal cluster pendant course. I used the same technique to make this cluster ring. The stone I'm using for this is an opal. It's a doublet, so you can see it's a different base to the top, and it's an irregular shape, which makes it a little bit trickier to create a piece of jewellery for, especially a cluster. But it does make a very interesting piece of jewellery. So with the base of the pendant that I'll be using later as a background, you should be able to see the profile of the stone side on like that. So that will give us a bit of an idea of what width to make the bezel for it to do its job. So this is the part here at the top, so you've got a contact point on this part of the gauge here, and we need it a little bit higher there to push onto the stone. Once we get it started, just pull the wire around, make sure it is annealed, and I'll just pull it around until I get to the sharp corner, the next sharp corner, and bring it around like so. It will spring back no matter how much you anneal it, but we can make the alteration once I cross it over to the starting point there. With the pliers as well, just a very slight squeeze will straighten up the profile. When it does that, it does budge things around a little bit, so you might need to make corrections elsewhere, but I think that is starting to look pretty good. I'll just let it get round to where the solder joint is and make sure I can see the silvery seam all around. Okay, I'll pickle that now. Now with the stone in place, I'll just mark around the setting using my dividers. Doesn't matter if you set your dividers up slightly over the size, better that way than making it too small. So now I'll space the stones around and just to see what kind of gap or overlap we're left with. So ideally we want the stones to just be touching. Just check to make sure that the spacing is correct on these long runs here. It spreads out a little bit around the tight curves. But you're getting the spacing right. Now I'll follow that cut with a 3 square needle file. We're going to cut out the centre section. So I've got my divider set to around about, this is about 1.5 mil. I'm now going to put the notches around the edge. These are for the claws. So the claws are going to be made from 0.9 mil wire. Got it here, so I'll have that on and ready to test fit it. So I'll start off just with a saw cut and get it right in the middle of the outer curve of the scalloping there, like so. So I'll do that all the way around. I'm now using a 1 mil cross tapered burr, and if there are any cuts that you've just done that are slightly out, you can just move it along with this burr and just see if the stone covers that notch. So when you look directly down, you can see it's covered the notch there. So you can imagine once that's tucked into the bezel and claw pushed on, then it's not going to come out of the setting. Mil ball burr, so you can use anything around about 0.4 to 0.6, 0.7, something like that. And I'm just locating the centre of each of these settings. This is a 0.7 mil drill, and you need to make sure that you've got a drill that's either exactly the same size as the wire or a fraction smaller. It's going to be a lot quicker, and what I want to do is I want to be able to force the claw in so that it holds really tight in there. It's really firm, so now I'm just going to go a little bit further in there. Just want to make sure it doesn't come out. I'll show you the first one, then I'll just repeat the process for the other ones. If you get it tight enough, you don't need to solder it in to do the next stage. And the next stage we need to work out where we're going to put a bend. I'm going to make this extra long for the first one, just to be on the safe side. So I'll show you with this one what my intentions are. So a nice neat pair of chain nose pliers, and we're just going to bend it right over. We want to make sure that we've got enough on it so that the end of it goes a little bit lower than the groove there, so that it's not left short, so to speak. So I'll just reconfirm that groove there and continue bending. And of course be careful not to catch your bezel there with your tools. You don't want to leave any marks on that. So that's the idea, is to bend it right over. We need to just squeeze the end. Now it's a pretty efficient way of attaching the claws. This one I'll make longer, so we'll bend it at this point here so that I can get right on the corner or right on the top of the bend. And squeeze it onto the groove. Like so. I'll use my solder pick to pick the solder up once it's melted into a little ball, and just pop it on to the side there. And if you minimise the solder use, then you're not going to run solder into the setting where the other end of the wire is. So all we need to do is pull that out later on. So I've got the setting on my third hand, and I've got a flux brush here loaded up with flux, and I've got all my claw wires ready to just dab onto the brush like so. And I've got lots of little pieces of medium solder spread out in this area here. So set yourself up with a system like so, it will make it a lot easier, and then just heat the solder up and put your wire on, and the solder will just run onto the wire. And we can just heat up the setting and place the claw wire there. It's not actually run, the solder, it's just the flux has made it sticky. So now I'm just holding my tweezers under the claw, heating the piece up until the solder runs, and then you'll see that the claw will just settle into place like so. And you can move it around, get it straight if need be. So now with a new position, I can get more heat on the base of the setting, and I've got a little bit more control. Here we go. Okay, this is the last one. So that I can file it down. And for those that I did the first way by putting the wire into the hole and then bending it around, I should be able to pull the wire out, although that one was a little bit sticky, so hopefully this one will come out easier. There we go. Edge is aiming towards the bezel, so you don't mark it. I'll remove any excess solder. Just make sure that the joint of the jump ring is against one of the claws so that it gets soldered as well. Now you can see how this cluster would look quite dramatic if it was made into a ring using a shank like this. So this is the wire basket cluster. So you can make a shank like that with the shoulders and then put that on there. So I'll just bend it around, and also if you're making it for a certain chain, just make sure it'll fit through there. So cut it to a point or file it. So it could be shaped rounded or keep it dead flat, entirely up to you. Together. And you need to make sure that you can hold the bail and have enough room there to allow the solder to run. And we want a blob of solder there to add to the strength of the bail. It's less likely that the solder is going to run onto the smaller jump ring. If it does that, just start again, just pull it apart, pull this jump ring off, make another one and do it again. Give yourself a little bit more room there though. So now I'm just aiming the heat under the bail. I'm going to stop, and I can see that the solders run into the joint. So the heartburn I'm using is this one, and it is 1.6 mil. So you need to make sure that the heartburn will go into the setting without contacting the bezel on the way in, otherwise you're going to mark the bezel. We want to try and keep it as clean as possible. So the first one always takes the longest whilst you work out the extent of the cut that you need to create. So you can just see the cut there. We get a push and that click is ideal. That means that it's wedged in there nice and tight. Brass pusher just to give the claw a little bit of a push over. I need to file it down a bit before I push it further on, but that will stop it from coming out. You should find that you'll get quicker as you move along. Just be careful you don't lose control of your burr and wrap it around the claws. It can leave a bit of a mess. So I'll show you what I've got so far. Now I'm just going to carry on then and get them all as far as this, but I'm quite happy with that because there's hardly a gap at all between them. Now the easiest way to tighten these stones is just by putting your pliers into the middle of the setting and just squeezing the claws a little bit tighter onto the stone. So I'll now finish off the claw tips just by filing the top down a little bit, not too much because I'm going to finish off with a cup burr, just covers the top of the tip quite nicely, so I'll just try it out and just see if I need to file off any more. So I'm burring quite straight. If I go at an angle, I'm going to cut into the side of the claw. And you can also just check if any of the stones move whilst you do this. This is a brownie. It's called a shofu brownie. It's really good for taking off the tool marks. This part, the long part here, is still a little bit thick, so I'll just reduce that, and that'll help the metal to move onto the stone. So now I'll try the stone. Okay, that sits in nicely, and I'll just show you the thickness I've got at the top there. So you can see that's reduced quite a lot, so the metal should move a lot easier now. But to do the setting, you're going to need a hammer tool. My favourite one for doing this kind of thing is it's called an electric engraver. It's made by Dremel. There you go, and you can change the tips. It's got a little grub screw there, just there, and this is 3mm round brass wire that I've just shaped at the end, and I'm going to use the brass on this to do the hammering because it's a lot safer on a stone such as this. So opals are pretty soft, so this should work okay. So I'll turn the dial to number 3, so that's about halfway, and then I'll test that and then turn it up if I need to. It is a little bit noisy, by the way. So I'm just doing the faceted part of the setting, and the inner rim that is in contact with the stone. I'm going to use a shofu greenie, and this one, the shape of this originally is a bullet or pencil shape greenie, and the point of it will allow me now to just go around the corners. Okay, now with that I will give it a polish and then we'll take a look. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and if you've always wanted to make jewellery, check out the website. We have hundreds of easy to follow courses, including lots of free ones.